The first time Gabriel Navarro called me directly, I assumed someone had died. That sounds dramatic, but Gabriel and I had known each other professionally for almost 7 years without ever exchanging phone numbers. I wrote about restaurants. He ran one of the best in Philadelphia. Our relationship consisted mostly of me eating his food, writing what I thought about it, and occasionally hearing through 3 separate people that Gabriel Navarro had called me an overeducated parasite with excellent taste. So when his name appeared on my phone at 4:17 on a Tuesday afternoon, I stared at it long enough for the call to nearly go to voicemail. Mercer. His voice was lower than I remembered from the few interviews we had done. Navarro. You sound disappointed. I'm deciding whether this is a prank. If I wanted to prank you, I'd send you somewhere serving truffle oil. That got a laugh out of me before I could stop it. There was a pause. Then Gabriel said, I need you here Saturday night. Saturday was Navarro's final service. The announcement had gone out that morning. 11 years, 3 major renovations. More awards than Gabriel claimed to care about, and a reservation list that had become nearly impossible within an hour of the closing notice. I had already been asked by my editor whether I wanted to write something about it. I had said no. Not because I did not care, because I did. What are you asking me to write? Nothing. Then what am I doing there? Eating, probably. Standing around being judgmental. Whatever comes naturally. Gabriel. I need you here for the last dinner. The sentence sounded different the second time. Less like an invitation, more like something he had rehearsed and still disliked saying. If you want a final review, I'm not doing one. I don't. A retrospective? No. An interview? No notebook, no column, no review. I leaned back in my chair. You're making a remarkably poor case for why I should come. I know. That was the first thing that unsettled me. Gabriel Navarro did not sound irritated that I was questioning him. He sounded nervous. Why me? Another pause. Because everyone else coming Saturday wants something from the restaurant. And I don't? That's what I'm counting on. Before I could ask what that meant, he told me to arrive at 4 and hung up. By Saturday afternoon, there was a line outside Navarro, even though the doors would not open for another hour and a half. I went around back. The kitchen door opened before I knocked. Gabriel stood there in a dark t-shirt and chef pants, one hand holding the door, the other dusted with flour. At 42, he looked less polished than he did when food magazines photographed him. His dark hair had gone slightly silver near his temples. There were shadows under his eyes. A small burn crossed one forearm. He looked tired. He also looked annoyingly good. You came. You invited me. You've ignored invitations before. Those were press events. This is worse. I'm beginning to understand that. He stepped aside. The kitchen was already moving. People crossed behind one another with the peculiar controlled speed of professionals who knew exactly how much space they occupied. Stock pots steamed, metal clattered. Someone was breaking down herbs near the prep counter. Another cook was portioning fish. I automatically started observing. Gabriel noticed. Don't what? That thing with your face. What thing? The thing where you turn into a newspaper. I'm standing here. You're reviewing the room. I'm looking. For you, those are suspiciously similar activities. He moved away before I could answer. I followed. What am I supposed to be doing? Nothing yet. You called me 4 days ago and told me you needed me. I've reconsidered. You don't need me? I've reconsidered how much I enjoy you asking questions. He stopped beside the stove and picked up a tasting spoon. Try this. I looked at him. You just told me not to review anything. I told you not to review the room. That is an important legal distinction. Daniel. It was the first time he had used my first name. For some reason, that made me take the spoon. The sauce was warm, bright with citrus, built over something deeper and savory. Technically excellent. Wrong. I tasted again. Gabriel folded his arms. Well, you know what's wrong with it. I asked you. You're waiting to see if I notice. Humor me. I set the spoon down. The acid arrives too early. You lose everything underneath it. One of the cooks nearby glanced toward us and immediately found something fascinating on a cutting board. Gabriel stared at me. Then he took another spoon, tasted the sauce himself, and turned to the line. Cut the citrus by a third. Add it later. No argument, no performance, no wounded chef theatrics. He simply changed it. That bothered me more than if he had told me to go to hell. You agree? Gabriel looked over his shoulder. Don't sound so surprised. You've spent years telling people I don't understand your food. No, I've spent years telling people you're irritating. There's a difference? A significant one. For the next hour, I stayed mostly out of the way. It was the first time I had ever watched Gabriel work without the barrier of a dining room. He did not shout. That surprised me. His reputation suggested volcanic temperament. What I saw instead was precision. A cook made a plating mistake. Gabriel corrected it once and moved on. A delivery arrived incomplete. He changed the prep order in under a minute. One of the younger servers came into the kitchen near panic because a party had arrived early and claimed they had been promised special seating. Gabriel listened, asked 2 questions, and solved it without embarrassing her. He was demanding, but not cruel. I realized, with some discomfort, that I had been carrying a version of him built partly from other people's stories. Then Gabriel caught me watching him. Reviewing me? Occupational damage. He leaned one hip against the counter. Try having an opinion that doesn't require publication. I have plenty. Name one. I dislike raisins. That's not an opinion. That's evidence of character. I think Philadelphia winters are worse than people admit. Cowardly. I think you enjoy arguing with me. That stopped him, only for a second. Then his mouth tilted. That one might require more research. Before I could answer, someone called his name from across the kitchen. Gabriel turned away. I was still standing there smiling when I realized it. At 6, the dining room filled. By 6:15, every table was occupied. I watched from a corner near the service station until Gabriel appeared beside me with 2 glasses of water. No wine? You're working. I'm not. You're observing professionally. You told me not to. You haven't figured out how. He handed me the water. I took it. Across the room, guests were photographing menus, glasses, each other. I heard people telling stories about anniversaries celebrated there, promotions, birthdays, first dates. The restaurant had become part of other people's memories. I looked at Gabriel. You could keep this open. He did not pretend not to understand. Yes. I heard the numbers are good. They are. Your lease is stable. Yes. You have investors. Several. So why close? His expression changed. Not anger. Fatigue. You think I'm failing. I didn't say that. You listed evidence like a prosecutor. I'm trying to understand. No. You're trying to locate the mistake. The accuracy of it irritated me. There usually is one. Maybe that's the problem with you. What is? You think every ending needs a diagnosis. I looked out at the dining room again. Doesn't this matter to you? Gabriel followed my gaze. For several seconds, his face softened. Too much. Then why? He picked up his water, but did not drink. Because I've spent 11 years becoming extremely good at running a life I don't want anymore. That answer took away every useful question I had prepared. Someone called him from the kitchen. Before he left, Gabriel looked at me again. And that face? What face? The one you make when you don't know what to say. I don't have one. You do. Then he disappeared through the kitchen doors. The final table left shortly after midnight. Staff remained, cleaning stations, wrapping food, arguing quietly about where everyone would meet for drinks afterward. I had assumed my part in the evening was finished. I found Gabriel near the pass, sleeves rolled higher now, exhaustion finally showing in the angle of his shoulders. I should go. He looked at me. No. I waited for an explanation. He glanced toward the dining room, where one server was blowing out the last candles. Stay. For what? Gabriel looked at the room that had carried his name for 11 years, then back at me. Until everyone else leaves. This time, I didn't ask why. I stayed. The staff did not leave quickly. That surprised me too. I had expected exhaustion to empty the place in minutes. Instead, people found reasons to remain. A server stood behind the bar, polishing the same glass long after it was clean. Two cooks argued over who would take a battered stockpot Gabriel had owned since opening night. Someone brought out a bottle of champagne that had apparently been hidden in the walk-in for 3 years because Gabriel kept declaring there was never an occasion important enough to waste it on. Tonight, nobody asked permission. Gabriel let them open it. I stayed near the edge of the dining room, which was where I was most comfortable. I watched people hug. I listened to stories I had never heard during interviews. One cook had started there at 19. A server met his husband during a private event upstairs. Their pastry chef had left once, returned twice, and was now moving to Boston because Gabriel had personally recommended her for a position she had been afraid to apply for. None of this matched the version of Gabriel I had collected over the years. The arrogant chef, the difficult chef, the man who could turn criticism into a blood feud. Those descriptions were not entirely false. They were simply incomplete. Eventually, Gabriel noticed where I was standing. "You're doing it again. I'm not reviewing anybody. You're hiding against a wall. That's different." Barely. He came over holding 2 plastic cups of champagne. I took one. "You don't have real glasses? We packed the good ones." "That feels sacrilegious." "Then don't tell anyone." I looked toward the staff. "Do they know I'm here?" "They have eyes." I meant why. Gabriel drank. "No. You told them nothing." "I told them you were staying." "That seems worse." "It probably is." There was something almost playful in his expression, but underneath it I could see fatigue gathering. Every few minutes someone came to say goodbye. Gabriel handled each one differently. A hug for some, a joke for others. A quiet sentence I could not hear. Once, when one of the younger cooks started crying, Gabriel looked briefly terrified, as if tears were a kitchen emergency he had never been trained to handle. Then he pulled the man into a rough embrace. "You're going to be fine. Stop making me regret teaching you feelings." I laughed. Gabriel glanced at me. "There. That." "What?" "You never laugh at me when you're writing." "I don't usually write while you're hugging employees. You should expand your range." At 1:15, the last group finally left. The front door locked behind them. The restaurant changed immediately. Without voices, without plates moving, without the constant opening and closing of the kitchen door, the dining room seemed larger, less glamorous. Chairs sat slightly crooked where people had pushed them back. One abandoned napkin remained beneath a table. A water ring marked the bar. Gabriel stood in the center of it. I suddenly understood part of why he had asked me to stay. Everyone else who loved this place had needed to say goodbye to something. Gabriel had needed someone who did not. He looked at me. "Come on." He led me into the kitchen. Most of the stations were already cleaned. Gabriel opened a low refrigerator, took out a container of rice, another of roasted vegetables, and some chicken that had clearly not been part of the menu. "This is the final dinner? The glamorous life of fine dining. You served 12 courses tonight and ate 2 spoonfuls standing over a trash can. You're destroying the fantasy. That's why you're here." He heated the food in a pan. I sat on a stool at the prep counter. "No plating tweezers? I will throw you out. You specifically asked me to stay. I'm reconsidering my judgment." We ate from shallow bowls beneath the kitchen lights. The food was simple, salty, slightly too much pepper. I told him so. Gabriel looked at me over his fork. "You really can't stop. You knew what you were inviting." "That's true." His voice became quieter. For a while, we ate without talking. Then I asked, "Why did you keep my second review?" His fork stopped. I had not planned the question. Earlier, while staff were gathering their things, I had seen a newspaper clipping pinned inside a cabinet door near Gabriel's office. Mine, 4 years old. The review had been mostly positive, which made Gabriel's anger at the time difficult to understand. I had praised the technique, the service, the control. Then I had written that the restaurant seemed increasingly interested in proving its own excellence, instead of discovering anything new. Gabriel had called it lazy criticism. 3 weeks later, he told another reporter that critics confused novelty with courage. I remembered being irritated for days. Now he leaned back on his stool. You saw it. Yes. You were snooping. It was attached to a cabinet. In my kitchen. I was invited. Daniel. Why keep something you hated? Gabriel looked down at his bowl. When he spoke again, the humor was gone. Because I didn't hate the review. That was not the answer I expected. You gave a convincing impression. I hated that you knew. I waited. Gabriel rubbed his thumb against the side of his cup. I'd been thinking it for months. That the restaurant was becoming repetitive? That I was. He exhaled. I knew exactly what would work. I knew what dish would get photographed. I knew what combination would make people say it felt new, while still being familiar enough that they'd order it. I knew how to build a menu people respected. That sounds like competence. It was. He looked directly at me. That was the problem. I said nothing. Gabriel gave a humorless laugh. You wrote 300 words about dinner, and somehow managed to describe something I hadn't admitted to myself after 11 years. So you attacked me. Obviously. At least you're self-aware. I've had 4 years. I looked at the empty kitchen. Why didn't you change it then? I did, for a while. What happened? The changes worked. I frowned. Gabriel smiled faintly. You still think success solves the argument. I think failure makes decisions easier. There's your problem. What problem? You think I closed because something stopped working. He pushed his empty bowl aside. I closed because everything kept working. That sat between us. I understood it intellectually, before I understood why it mattered. He had not lost the restaurant. He had escaped it. Then why invite me tonight? Gabriel studied me. You still want one clean answer. I'd settle for an answer of any kind. He stood, took our bowls to the sink, and rinsed them. Then he spoke with his back to me. Everyone tonight came because they loved this place. That seems reasonable. My staff wanted me to know what it gave them. Customers wanted to tell me about birthdays and proposals and dead parents and first dates. Investors spent the last month telling me what it could become. He shut off the water. You were the only person I knew who had never needed the restaurant to be anything except what it actually was. That may be the nicest insult you've ever given me. He turned. I wanted somebody here who wouldn't ask me to save it. I thought about the questions I had asked him earlier. The lease, the investors, the numbers. I had done exactly that. Gabriel saw the realization. You tried. I was being rational. You were being predictable. That sounds rich coming from you. I know. A smile moved briefly across his face. Then he said, and before you get unbearable about this, you're wrong about me sometimes too. There it is. I mean it. Give me an example. You think I'm confident. You are. I'm decisive. That's different. The answer landed harder than it should have. Gabriel looked around the kitchen. I know how to make decisions when there's a ticket printer running and 15 people waiting for me. I know how to solve a service. I know how to run this place. He paused. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing Monday morning. For the first time all night, Gabriel Navarro looked genuinely uncertain. Not dramatic, not broken. Just a 42-year-old man who had voluntarily dismantled the structure that had told him where to be every day for 11 years. I stopped trying to think of the correct response. That sounds terrifying. Gabriel looked at me. Yes. So what are you going to do? I don't know. I waited for my brain to generate options. Consulting. Another restaurant. Television. Teaching. Investors. I let all of them pass without saying anything. Gabriel noticed. Nothing? You just told me you don't know. And? Maybe you're allowed not to know for one night. Something in his face softened. Careful, Mercer. What? That almost sounded human. We turned off the kitchen lights together. Gabriel locked the office, then the wine room, then the back entrance. At the front door, he stopped. For 11 years, that door had opened into a restaurant carrying his surname in small brass letters. He reached up and turned the final switch. The dining room went dark. Nothing happened. No dramatic collapse. No last-minute investor arrived. Gabriel simply locked the door. Outside, the city had become quiet enough that we could hear a bus braking at the corner. I put my hands in my coat pockets. So this is where I say congratulations? I'd accept condolences too. Which do you want? Gabriel considered that. Then he smiled. I'll tell you when I figure it out. We walked in opposite directions. I assumed that was the end of us. 3 days later, at 12:11 in the afternoon, my phone rang. Gabriel, I answered. If another restaurant is closing, I'm unavailable. There is no restaurant. Exactly. Are you free tonight? I stopped typing. For what? A pause. Then Gabriel said, dinner. No review? No review. No professional emergency? I currently have no profession capable of producing one. I smiled despite myself. Then why are you asking me? This time, Gabriel did not hide behind a joke. Because I want to eat with you. And for the first time since I had known him, there was nothing professional left between us to explain why. Gabriel chose a diner in South Philadelphia that looked as if nobody had redesigned it since 1987. Red vinyl booths, chrome-edged tables, a dessert case near the register filled with pies under plastic domes. The menu was 6 laminated pages long and contained exactly one item described as seasonal, which turned out to mean strawberries were available. I arrived first. That bothered me more than it should have. I was used to arriving before people professionally. It gave me time to understand a room before anyone expected me to participate in it. Tonight, there was nothing to understand. No reservation under a publication name. No manager hovering nearby. No kitchen sending out an extra course because someone had recognized me. Just a booth for 2. Gabriel walked in 4 minutes later wearing jeans, a dark jacket, and an expression that suggested he had already reconsidered the entire idea twice. You came early. I was nearby. You live 20 minutes away. Traffic was cooperative. He slid into the booth across from me. Are you nervous? No. Good. Me neither. That was convincing. A server appeared before either of us could continue and asked if we needed menus. Gabriel said yes. I stared at him. What? You need a menu? I've never been here. You chose it. That does not imply research. I opened mine. This may be the most reckless thing I've ever seen you do. Wait until I order. He chose meatloaf. I ordered a turkey club. Neither of us discussed the food when it arrived. That felt almost indecent. Halfway through dinner, Gabriel put down his fork. You're trying very hard. To eat a sandwich? Not to analyze anything. I can criticize your posture if that would make you comfortable. There he is. I smiled. Gabriel leaned back. What did you do Monday? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? After the restaurant, first Monday, without somewhere you had to be. Oh. He looked briefly embarrassed. I woke up at 5:30. Habit? Panic. I laughed. I'm serious. I know. I made coffee, cleaned my kitchen, went to the gym before sunrise with men who seemed personally offended by happiness, came home, changed a light bulb I'd ignored for 6 months. That sounds productive. It was unbearable. Why? Gabriel looked toward the window. Because nothing needed me. There was no self-pity in the sentence. That made it sharper. He continued. The restaurant always needed something. Even when I wasn't there, somebody called. Vendor, staff, equipment, reservation problem. I used to fantasize about one day when nobody needed anything. And now? By 10:30, I was considering breaking my own refrigerator. I laughed hard enough that the couple in the next booth looked over. Gabriel smiled. There, you do that more when you're not working. What? Laugh. You've mentioned that. Because it keeps happening. I took a drink of water. You've spent an alarming amount of time observing me. You reviewed my work for 7 years. Professionally. That distinction is doing a lot of labor tonight. I looked at him. He held my gaze. For once, neither of us rescued the moment with a joke. I changed the subject first. You asked what I did Monday. What do you want to do next? Gabriel's face closed slightly. I don't know. Still? It's been 3 days. You've had 11 years to imagine it. I spent 11 years imagining not being there. That's different from imagining where I would be. I understood that more than I wanted to admit. Gabriel noticed. What? Nothing. That usually means something. I looked down at my plate. My ex used to ask me where I wanted to live. Gabriel waited. We were together almost 6 years. Every year or two, he'd find some apartment listing and ask whether I liked the neighborhood. I'd talk about commuting time, rent, building quality, noise. Not exactly romantic. I thought I was being useful. What did he want you to say? That I could picture us somewhere. Gabriel was quiet. I had not intended to tell him that. The diner suddenly felt brighter. I kept going because stopping would have made the admission larger. Near the end, we had the same argument repeatedly. He wanted me to tell him what I wanted from us. What did you say? Mostly reasonable things. That sounds ominous. It was. I picked at the edge of my sandwich. I told him we communicated well. We had compatible schedules. We rarely fought about money. We had similar expectations around family. Gabriel stared at me. You gave him a performance review. Yes. That is spectacularly bad. Thank you. What did he say? I remembered the apartment kitchen. My ex standing by the sink, not angry anymore. That had been the worst part. He said he knew what I thought about everything except us. Gabriel's expression changed. He asked me to tell him one thing I wanted, that wasn't just the most defensible option. And? I couldn't. Gabriel did not say he was sorry. He did not tell me I had been afraid, or that my ex had been unfair, or that relationships were complicated. He asked, was he wrong? I looked at him. No. The answer came faster than I expected. Gabriel nodded once. I disliked how relieved I felt afterward. So now you spend your life having opinions professionally, he said. That is an offensively simplified interpretation. Is it inaccurate? Those are different questions. Daniel. I sighed. No. For a few seconds, the only sound between us was silverware and a coffee machine behind the counter. Then I said, your turn. My turn for what? To be psychologically inconvenienced. I closed a restaurant. I've been inconvenienced enough. What do you want? Gabriel laughed once. That again? Yes. I told you I don't know. You told me what you don't want. That's easier. He stopped smiling. I recognized the look because I had worn it myself 5 minutes earlier. Gabriel folded his napkin. I want to wake up without immediately being late for something. That's a start. I want to cook because I'm curious again. Better. I want weekends. Ambitious. I want to see my sister without rescheduling her 3 times. He looked at me. And I want people to stop asking what my next restaurant is called. There it was. Not a plan. But a preference. That sounds like quite a lot for someone who says he doesn't know. Gabriel considered that. You're irritating when you're useful too. I contain multitudes. We paid separately without discussing it. Outside, the night was cool enough that neither of us suggested going home immediately. We walked north without choosing a destination. Gabriel kept his hands in his jacket pockets. I wondered whether this was a date. Then I resented myself for trying to classify it. We stopped near a small park where the trees had just begun to turn. Gabriel looked over. You're doing the face. I hate that you've invented a face for me. You have several. What does this one mean? You're trying to decide what this is. I said nothing. His mouth curved. See? You're enjoying this too much. I've waited years to be right about you. And what exactly are you right about? That you're much less certain when nobody gives you something to judge. That should have annoyed me. Instead, I stepped closer. Gabriel's expression changed immediately. No smile now. No performance. He looked at my mouth, then back at my eyes. I could have asked a question. I could have turned it into a conversation about timing, expectations, professional complications, or whether either of us was emotionally prepared for whatever came next. For once, I did none of those things. I kissed him. Gabriel froze for perhaps half a second. Then one hand came up against my jaw, and he kissed me back. Nothing about it felt tentative after that. He tasted faintly of coffee. When we separated, we stayed close enough that I could feel his breath. Gabriel looked almost amused. What? I was waiting to see how you'd explain that. I'm not going to. Really? Yes. His thumb moved once along my jaw before his hand dropped. I like this version of you. Don't get attached. Too late to make that joke convincing. The warmth of the moment disappeared just enough to make me look at him. Gabriel seemed to realize what he had said at the same time. Neither of us corrected it. The next afternoon, he called. I have a problem. Professional emergency? Possibly. I thought you were unemployed. Apparently, people keep trying to ruin that. He told me 2 offers had arrived that morning. A hospitality group wanted him to design and lead a new flagship restaurant downtown. The salary made me stop walking. They were offering broad creative control, strong financing, and a level of visibility that would move him from respected local chef into something larger. The second offer came from a culinary school. Smaller program. Less money, fewer headlines, teaching, consulting, room to develop projects of his own. Gabriel finished describing both. Then he went quiet. I already had comparisons forming in my head. Compensation, reach, prestige, long-term leverage. I should have noticed how familiar that feeling was. Instead, I asked, when do you have to decide? Next week. And you want my opinion? Gabriel hesitated. Then he said, yes. I looked out across the street, already arranging his future into categories I knew how to evaluate. All right. By Wednesday afternoon, I had built a comparison table. I did not call it a comparison table, because even I understood how that would sound. I called it notes. But there were columns. Compensation. Creative control. Staff size. Long-term visibility. Contract length. Financial risk. Gabriel's likely negotiating power. The flagship restaurant won almost every category. When Gabriel came to my apartment that evening, I had enough self-awareness not to print anything. Barely. He stood in my kitchen while I opened a bottle of wine. So? You want the short version? I want your version. That should have warned me. I leaned against the counter. The restaurant offer is stronger. Gabriel waited. The hospitality group has financing already committed. They're giving you unusually broad control. You'd have a larger kitchen, stronger purchasing power, better staffing infrastructure, and enough capital that you wouldn't spend the first 2 years solving problems with your own money. And the school? Interesting. That sounded charitable. It's not. Daniel. The program is small. The salary is less than half. You'd be working inside an institution where decisions take longer. Budget approval alone could make you violent. I've been violent over linen contracts. Exactly. He smiled despite himself. I continued. The restaurant keeps your name visible. It protects the professional value you spent 20 years building. Gabriel's expression changed slightly. I mistook it for concentration. The school gives you more free time, I said, but you'd be stepping away at the exact point when your market value is probably highest. My market value. You know what I mean. I do. His voice had cooled. I finally noticed. You asked what I thought. I did. And now you're angry because I answered? I'm not angry. You've become very still. Maybe I'm listening. You don't listen like that. How do I listen? More aggressively. That almost got a smile. Almost. Gabriel walked to the window. What if I don't want another restaurant? Then that matters. But not enough to change your answer. I frowned. You asked which opportunity I thought was stronger. No. He turned. I asked what you thought I should do. That's essentially the same question. It really isn't. I felt something defensive rise in me. What were you hoping I'd say? His jaw tightened. That is exactly the problem. What is? You still think there's a correct answer hidden somewhere, and I'm irritated because you failed to guess it. Then explain the distinction. I wasn't asking which resume you liked better. The sentence landed with more force than it deserved. I'm not evaluating your resume. You just used the phrase market value. It's relevant. To a business decision. This is a career decision. It's my life. And careers tend to occur inside those. Gabriel laughed once, without humor. God, you are good at this. At what? Making judgment sound neutral. I set my glass down. You asked me for honesty. I know. Then don't punish me for giving it. His eyes moved to mine. For a second, I saw something there that was not anger. Hurt. Then it disappeared. I should go. Gabriel. It's fine. No, it clearly isn't. I said I should go, not that we need to conduct an exit interview. He picked up his jacket. I followed him to the door. Are you seriously leaving because I think the restaurant offer is better? He stopped with one hand on the knob. No. Then why? He looked back at me. Because I need to figure out whether I asked for your opinion or your permission. Then he left. We did not speak for 2 days. That should have felt insignificant. We had spent years going months without speaking. Instead, by Friday afternoon, I had checked my phone enough times to become embarrassed by myself. He finally texted at 6. Dinner Sunday? I answered immediately. Yes. Then deleted immediately. Waited 90 seconds. Then sent it again. Sunday was good. Dinner was good. We kissed outside my building afterward. That was good too. The problem was that none of the things beneath those moments had disappeared. For the next 2 weeks, we continued seeing each other in a way neither of us officially named. Gabriel came to my apartment twice. I went to his once and discovered that a man capable of controlling 40 people through a dinner rush kept his personal mail in 3 unrelated piles on the floor. This is upsetting. It's paper. It's a system failure. You're not allowed to review my apartment. I'm not reviewing it. I'm reporting a health concern. He kissed me before I could continue. That became one of his more effective arguments. There were good nights. Very good nights. A late walk near the river. Lunch at a Vietnamese place where Gabriel deliberately ordered something he had never tried and refused to tell me what he thought until I answered first. One evening we cooked together at his apartment and discovered we were almost incapable of sharing a cutting board without arguing. Attraction was easy. Being known was not. Whenever I asked about the 2 offers, Gabriel became vague. I'm thinking. What specifically? Things. That is not an answer. It is if I'm not asking for an evaluation. I began to feel shut out. At first, I told myself I was respecting his process. Then I began noticing the resentment. It was ridiculous. Gabriel had every right to make his own decision. But he had asked for my opinion. He had made that opinion personal, then acted as though my involvement itself had become dangerous. One Thursday evening, I met him at a temporary kitchen space he had borrowed from a friend. He was experimenting with a dish for no clear reason other than wanting to cook. That should have pleased me. Instead, I was already irritated when I arrived. Gabriel seemed to sense it. You're cheerful. I'm delightful. You're doing that thing where your politeness becomes threatening. I learned from editors. He ignored me and turned back to the stove. For half an hour, I watched him work. No tickets, no staff, no customers. He moved differently alone. Less efficiently, perhaps. More curiously. He tasted, changed something, waited, changed it back. Eventually, he filled a spoon and held it toward me. Try. I hesitated. You're sure? Gabriel gave me a look. I tasted. Roasted squash. Brown butter. Something bitter underneath. The first impression was rich and warm, but the finish collapsed. Gabriel watched my face. Well, I'm asking. The bitterness is too aggressive. His expression changed immediately. I like it. Then keep it. That's all? You asked. You think it's wrong. I think it overwhelms everything else. Maybe I want it to. Then why ask me? Gabriel turned back to the stove. Because I wanted your opinion. No. He looked at me. You wanted my agreement. Silence. I knew, even before the words finished leaving my mouth, that I had hit something real. Gabriel set down the spoon. That's unfair. Is it? Yes. Every time I disagree with you lately, you act as though I've failed some emotional test I didn't know I was taking. I'm not testing you. Then stop asking questions when you've already decided which answer proves I understand you. His face hardened. And you stop pretending your answers are facts. I don't. You do constantly. I said I think the bitterness is too strong. You said it like a lab result. That is absurd. Is it? He moved closer. You don't tell people what you like. You hand down findings. The room seemed suddenly smaller. I laughed once, because I did not know what else to do. That sounds suspiciously like something a chef who can't take criticism would say. Gabriel flinched. It was slight. Enough. I regretted the sentence immediately, but he was already stepping away. There he is. Gabriel. No, that was useful. I didn't mean. You did. He turned off the burner. You know what's exhausting about you? I waited. You can say something cruel and then examine whether it was technically accurate. I said I was sorry. No, you were about to explain intent. That stopped me, because he was right. Again, Gabriel started cleaning the counter. I stood there feeling the familiar urge to repair the conversation with precision. Instead I said, that was cruel. His hands stopped. I'm sorry. He looked at me. Some of the anger left his face, but not all of it. Thank you. We did not fix anything that night. That was new for me too. 3 mornings later, I opened my email and found a press release from the culinary school. I read Gabriel's name twice before I understood what I was seeing. Gabriel Navarro had accepted the teaching position, not the flagship restaurant, the school, the smaller life. The one I had told him made less sense. I called him before I finished reading the press release. Gabriel answered on the 4th ring. Daniel, you took the teaching job. There was a pause. Yes. I stood in my kitchen staring at the email on my laptop, as if the wording might rearrange itself into something less irritating. When were you planning to tell me? I was going to call tonight. The school apparently had a different communication strategy. That wasn't supposed to go out until noon. It is 12:14. Then they were punctual. I heard traffic behind him. He was outside somewhere. The calmness in his voice made me angrier. You made the decision days ago. Tuesday. And you said nothing. I was trying to make the decision without turning it into another argument between us. That worked beautifully. Daniel. No, I'm serious. You asked for my opinion, disliked it, stopped discussing the decision with me, then chose the opposite option and let me find out from a press release. I didn't choose the opposite option because you recommended the restaurant. That isn't the point. Then what is? I opened my mouth. Nothing useful arrived. The real answer was embarrassingly simple. I had wanted to matter. Not enough to choose for him, but enough to be included. I could not make myself say that. So I said, you could have told me. Gabriel was quiet for several seconds. Then he said, you're right. That should have helped. It didn't. But you weren't supposed to choose it, he added. I know that. Do you? The question sharpened something in me. Of course I do. Because when I asked what you thought, you turned my future into an optimization problem. That is not fair. It's not completely unfair either. I hated when he did that. Refused to make himself easy to dismiss. I walked away from the laptop. So why teaching? Because I want to teach. That's it? That's not enough? I'm asking. No, you're checking. I stopped. Gabriel continued. I spent most of the last week trying to figure out why the restaurant offer made me feel tired before I even accepted it. And the school? I toured the kitchen Tuesday morning. One of the students ruined a sauce, argued with me about why it wasn't ruined, then fixed it while still insisting I was wrong. Despite myself, I smiled. You fell in love immediately, deeply. His voice warmed. I stayed 3 hours longer than I planned. Nobody cared whether I was opening another restaurant. Nobody asked about awards. I showed 6 people how to do something, and then they went and did it differently. That sounds dangerous for you. It was great. There was something in his voice I had not heard when he described the flagship restaurant. Lightness. I had missed it because I had been too busy measuring the decision. Gabriel said, I don't need you to agree. I know. But I do need you to stop acting like disagreement means I failed to consider the facts. I wasn't doing that. You called the school interesting, the way people describe experimental theater they hated. That is wildly specific. Because you've done it. I rubbed my forehead. You're enjoying this now. A little. The anger in me had already begun losing shape. That made the thing underneath it harder to ignore. You should have told me. I should have. Before the press release. Yes. And I should not have found out, because a communications director used a mailing list. No. I waited. Gabriel waited too. Neither of us moved to the larger truth. Finally, he said, Can I see you tonight? I almost said yes automatically. Then I heard my own reluctance. I don't know. Gabriel did not push. All right. That irritated me too. You're just going to accept that? What would you prefer? A hostage negotiation? I don't know. Then maybe we both get to not know something for a few hours. He said he would call tomorrow. We did not speak that night. The next day became 2 days, then 4. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the difficulty. There was no betrayal large enough to justify ending whatever we had started. No lie, no other man, no catastrophic argument. Just 2 people who had discovered that being attracted to each other had not magically made their worst habits charming. I went back to work. I reviewed a new restaurant in Rittenhouse and caught myself deleting the phrase technically impeccable because it sounded like something I would have said about Gabriel's career offer. I put it back. The food had been technically impeccable. Self-awareness did not require dishonesty. That distinction stayed with me. On Friday evening, my editor, Helen, leaned against my office door. You look unpleasant. I always look unpleasant. More curated than usual. I'm touched by your concern. She entered anyway. Helen had edited me for 9 years and therefore regarded boundaries as suggestions. Is this about Navarro? I looked up. What about him? That was subtle. How do you know anything is about him? You declined the closing retrospective. Then you asked me whether accepting a teaching position counted as a retreat from relevance. I stared at her. You said that was hypothetical. You said it was hypothetical. She sat opposite me. Are you dating Gabriel Navarro? No. Helen waited. We kissed. Her eyebrows rose. More than once. They continue rising. And now we're not speaking. There we are. She considered me, with the expression she usually reserved for paragraphs that needed substantial restructuring. What did you do? That assumes I did something. You're using passive voice emotionally. I hate when you weaponize editing. What did you do? I told her a shortened version. Not Gabriel's apartment. Not the way he kissed me when I became too articulate. Not how much I had started wanting his name on my phone. Just the career decision. Helen listened. When I finished, she said, So you think he made the wrong choice? I think the restaurant offer had more professional upside. That wasn't my question. I nearly laughed. Apparently, everyone in my life had formed a committee. I don't know if it was wrong. Do you want him to take the restaurant job? I wanted him to consider it seriously. Daniel. I looked away. She waited me out. Eventually, I said, I understood that version of him. Helen's face changed. There it was. The answer I had spent a week disguising as concern. If Gabriel opened another restaurant, I knew who he was. Chef, owner, public figure, a person whose work I understood how to approach. Teaching changed the shape of him. Less visible, less predictable, more available maybe. And somehow that frightened me more. I think, I said slowly, part of me wanted him to take the restaurant, because I knew how to stand next to that. Helen nodded. And what do you want from him? My stomach tightened. That is an aggressively personal question for the workplace. You can file a complaint. I looked down at my desk. I had no answer that did not sound like a review. I wanted dinners, arguments, his ridiculous mail piles. I wanted him to keep calling. I wanted to watch him become somebody neither of us had already defined. But wanting those things meant admitting I had been hurt, not because Gabriel chose teaching. I had been hurt because he chose, without bringing me with him emotionally, and I had never told him I wanted to be brought. That evening, Gabriel called. I answered. Hi. Hi. No sarcasm. No armor. He said, I think we should talk. I agree. We met the next afternoon by the river. Gabriel looked tired. So did I, probably. We walked for several minutes before either of us started. Gabriel went first. I use you as an enemy sometimes. I looked over. That is a strong opening. I've been thinking. Dangerous. He smiled faintly. Then it disappeared. When your opinion matters too much, I get angry at you for having one. I said nothing. It's easier than admitting I care whether you approve. The honesty in it made me uncomfortable in precisely the way honesty was supposed to. Gabriel stopped walking. But you hide behind being right. I stiffened. There it is. I'm serious. I know. You tell me what makes sense, what's stronger, what's more defensible. Then, if I choose differently, you get to stand outside the choice and call yourself objective. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? No. Gabriel looked directly at me. If I had taken the restaurant job, what would you have felt? I knew the professional answer. Pleased that he had preserved his leverage. Interested in what he built. Curious how his style changed. All true, none sufficient. And if I left Philadelphia to do it? He asked. That was when the truth finally cornered me. I would have hated it. Gabriel's face softened slightly. Why didn't you say that? Because then I would have been asking something from him. Because then his decision could hurt me. Because then I would not be a critic. I would just be a man who wanted another man nearby. I don't know how, I said. Gabriel nodded. I know. We started walking again. After a while, I said, you should have told me before the announcement. Yes. I'm not letting you turn this into my entire fault. I'm not. Good. I should have told you, because you mattered to the decision emotionally, even though the decision was mine. I looked at him. That was exactly what I had wanted. The problem was that hearing it did not erase everything else. Gabriel seemed to understand. I also don't think we should keep doing this the way we have been. My stomach dropped. Doing what? This. Very precise. You know what I mean. I did. The dinners. The kisses. The arguments that began as professional disagreements and ended somewhere much more personal. The way we had taken attraction as proof that we could skip learning how to be together. Gabriel rubbed the back of his neck. I like you. I had gathered. A lot. That part was less clear. He gave me a look. Then his expression softened. But liking you makes your opinion louder in my head. I need to learn not to turn that into your responsibility. I nodded slowly. And I need to learn to say what I want before I start building evidence for why it would be reasonable. Yes. That sounded suspiciously enthusiastic. I've been waiting years for that sentence. I laughed, then stopped, because the next part hurt. Gabriel said, "I think I need some space." I looked out over the river. There was no villain in the sentence. No cruelty. No misunderstanding I could dismantle. Just a boundary that made sense. "Okay," he exhaled. "You're not going to argue?" I considered it. I assumed. "But I don't think either of us needs a better argument." Gabriel looked at me. For once, agreeing did not feel like winning. We did not break up. That would have required defining what we were strongly enough to end it. Instead, we stopped. For the next 3 weeks, we did not see each other. There were no dramatic late-night calls, no accidental encounters, no messages typed and deleted at 2 in the morning. Gabriel started teaching. I knew because the culinary school announced his first workshop, then another. His name appeared less often in restaurant news and more often in photographs of students standing around stainless steel tables while he demonstrated something with his hands. I did not save the pictures. I also did not delete them from my browser history. Progress came in uneven forms. At work, I started noticing how often I wrote around preference. A dish was balanced. A room was effective. A menu was coherent. Sometimes those were the correct words. Sometimes they were camouflage. One afternoon, Helen returned a draft with a sentence circled. "Would you order it again?" Underneath, she had written, "You spent 700 words avoiding this." I walked into her office. "This is hostile editing. It's one question. The answer is subjective. That's generally how liking things works." I sat down. Helen looked at me. "Well? No. Why?" I thought about it. Because it was impressive without being enjoyable. She waited. "And?" I sighed. I didn't want more. There, publishable human emotion. You make it sound disgusting. You'll survive. It became an exercise, not in becoming less critical. In admitting where criticism ended and desire began. I liked certain restaurants that were imperfect. I disliked some that were objectively excellent. I missed Gabriel. That was not an assessment. It was not a prediction. It did not require evidence. I simply missed him. The harder realization was that missing him did not automatically mean I should contact him. Gabriel had asked for space. Respecting that request was not passivity. For once, restraint was participation too. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, a message appeared on my phone. "Gabriel." There was no greeting. "I'm teaching Saturday. You should come." I stared at it for a full minute. The old version of me immediately generated questions. Was this personal? Was he inviting other journalists? Did he expect feedback? Was this reconciliation? I typed, "As a critic?" Deleted it. Then, "Do you want me there?" Deleted that too, because the message had already answered it. Finally, I wrote, "What time?" His response came almost immediately. 2. Then, after a few seconds, and no notebook, I smiled. Saturday afternoon, I walked into the culinary school, carrying nothing but my coat and the discomfort of having no professional purpose. Gabriel was already teaching. 8 students stood around 2 workstations while he demonstrated how to correct a sauce that had separated. He looked different, not transformed, not magically softer. Still Gabriel, still impatient when someone asked a question they had already answered themselves, still precise, still capable of producing silence with one raised eyebrow. But he was laughing more. A student disagreed with his method. Gabriel listened, actually listened. Then he said, "Show me." She did. Her version worked. Gabriel tasted it, considered for a second, and nodded. "Better." The student looked shocked. Gabriel noticed. "What? You thought I invited disagreement recreationally?" A few people laughed. So did I. His eyes found me across the room. For half a second, he lost whatever he had been saying. Then he recovered. I felt absurdly pleased. The class lasted another hour. I stayed at the back. No notes. No evaluation. No, mostly. Afterward, students gathered their things and left in groups. Gabriel cleaned one counter while pretending not to monitor whether I was still there. I walked closer. Your students are afraid of you. They should be. One of them ignored your technique. She was right. That must have been difficult. I've developed spiritually. I can tell. He looked at me. The humor faded, but not the warmth. Thanks for coming. You invited me. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either. That was true. Gabriel nodded toward the empty stools. Sit. I sat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked, "What did you think?" The question was so familiar that my body almost answered before I did. I had notes. Of course I had notes. The pacing of the demonstration could have been tighter. He interrupted two students too quickly. His explanation of emulsification was excellent. The room responded to him. He was better at teaching than I had expected. All true. I looked at him. I liked watching you do it. Gabriel went very still. I continued before I could retreat. You looked happy. His expression shifted. I was, and I liked that too. There was a small silence. Then Gabriel said, "That wasn't exactly a review." No. Should I be concerned? Probably. His smile appeared slowly. I could feel the rest of the truth waiting. This was the moment where I usually stopped, where I allowed implication to do the dangerous work. I thought of my ex asking what I wanted. I thought of Gabriel choosing a future without me because I had never made clear that my place in it mattered to me. I thought of 3 weeks of missing him without turning the feeling into an argument. I want to keep seeing you. Gabriel's smile disappeared. Not because he disliked the answer, because he understood what it had cost me to say it. I kept going. I don't mean professionally. Good. I don't mean because I think teaching is the right choice. Also good. I may still think you make terrible decisions occasionally. There he is. But they're yours. Gabriel looked down at his hands, then back at me. You really mean that? Yes. Even when you think I'm wrong? Especially then. He laughed softly. That sounds exhausting for you. It already is. He stepped closer to the counter. I need to tell you something too. All right. I still care too much what you think. I smiled slightly. That does sound difficult. It is. And I'm trying to stop making that your fault. That was Gabriel. Not suddenly healed. Not magically indifferent to approval. Just willing to own the part that belonged to him. He leaned his palms against the counter. I wanted you here today because I wanted you to see this. I waited. And I wanted you to like it. Gabriel? I know. He smiled. But if you hadn't, I'd still be here Monday. There it was. The thing I had needed, without knowing how to ask for it. Not agreement. Not surrender. A man making his own choice and still wanting me close enough to have an opinion. I stood. So what happens now? Gabriel raised an eyebrow. You're asking me? I'm experimenting. Dangerous. I've heard. He came around the counter until we were standing close. I want dinner with you. When? Tonight. Where? Somewhere I don't work. That eliminates several complications. And I want to date you. The directness of it made me laugh nervously. Gabriel noticed. You all right? No. Good. I'm trying to say something. I can see the smoke. I looked at him. I want that too. Simple. Embarrassingly simple. Gabriel touched my face. This time there was no question hidden inside the gesture. I leaned into it before he could doubt the answer. Then I kissed him. We went to dinner at a small Lebanese place neither of us had been to. Gabriel complained about one dish. I liked it. We survived. That turned out to be the pattern. Not agreement. Not constant harmony. Just enough room for two people to have different reactions without treating difference as a threat. Gabriel still occasionally asked what I thought, disliked the answer, and went quiet for 30 seconds before admitting he had done exactly what he promised not to do. I still occasionally gave him 3 reasons for wanting something before realizing I had not actually said I wanted it. Once, I spent 4 minutes, explaining why a weekend in New York would be practical because we both had Monday free. Gabriel listened patiently. Then he asked, "Do you want to go?" "Yes." "Great. You could have started there." I was providing context. You were hiding in context. "I dislike your growth." "You're welcome." He was not always better at it than I was. One Sunday, he asked whether I wanted to meet his sister. I said yes. Then Gabriel spent 10 minutes explaining why it was not a significant relationship milestone, why she happened to be nearby, why there was no expectation attached to it. I waited. Eventually he stopped. "What?" he asked. "You want me to meet her?" "Yes. And you're afraid I'll interpret that as pressure?" "Yes. And therefore you've built a legal defense around brunch." Gabriel pointed at me. "Don't enjoy this." "I'm enjoying it enormously." He met my eyes. Then he laughed. "I want you to meet my sister. I want to meet her." That was enough. Weeks passed. Then months. Then months. Gabriel settled into teaching with the kind of seriousness he once reserved for service. He complained about institutional meetings, praised students he pretended annoyed him, and discovered that weekends were real things adults could possess, without requesting permission from investors. He cooked differently too. Not better. That was the strange part. Sometimes worse. He experimented more, failed more, made things I disliked and kept making them anyway. The first time that happened, I told him a broth tasted muddy. Gabriel frowned. I watched the old reaction cross his face. Defense. Hurt. The urge to argue. Then he tasted it again. "I like it." "All right. You still think it's muddy?" "Yes." "And you're not going to explain further?" "I can, if you want." He considered. "No." "Good." He turned back to the stove. 2 minutes later he said, "It is a little muddy." I laughed so hard I had to sit down. My own work changed less visibly. I still wrote reviews. I still believed honesty mattered. I still disliked sentimental writing that turned every restaurant into somebody's childhood memory and every dinner into a metaphor for mortality. But I became more suspicious of distance. Not objectivity. Distance. There was a difference. I began allowing myself to write sentences that admitted when pleasure mattered, when desire mattered, when technically imperfect food made me want another bite. Helen noticed. "You're getting emotional." "I will resign." "No, you won't." "I could." "You like your job." I opened my mouth with 3 reasons ready, then stopped. "Yes." Helen smiled. Terrifying. One evening, several months after the culinary school invitation, Gabriel cooked at his apartment. Nothing elaborate. A bowl of pasta, roasted vegetables, a sauce he was still playing with because leaving restaurant ownership had only made experimentation worse. I sat on the counter because Gabriel had given up trying to stop me. He tasted the sauce, changed something, tasted again, then held a spoon toward me. I looked at it. He noticed. "What?" "Nothing. That face says something. You're stealing my material." "Try it." I took the spoon. My brain immediately began. Salt, acid, texture, heat. The sauce was good. Very good. A little more bitter than I would have chosen. A little less polished than something he would have served at Navarro. More alive. Gabriel watched me struggle. Then he asked, "Do you want more?" I stopped. That was all. Not whether it was balanced. Not whether another diner would order it. Not whether I could defend the answer. Did I want more? Yes. Gabriel turned toward the stove. I caught his hand. He looked back. "And I want you to stay after dinner." His smile widened. "See? You're learning. Don't review me. Don't review me." He leaned in and kissed me. There was still food on the stove. There was still work waiting for both of us the next morning. There were still things about Gabriel I misunderstood, and things about me he would probably spend years getting wrong. For once, none of that needed solving before I could choose. I still made a living deciding what was worth returning to. I just finally learned that wanting to return was an answer too.